Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenney-Britton, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenney-Britton, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Kris and Bill Tenney-Britton here today to talk about missed marks, the ministry failure post-mortem. Yeah.
I love this idea of a post-mortem. When we first were doing church planting.
You always were sort of a morbid kind of person.
That would be you. Anyways.
Post-mortems, okay.
We could call it an autopsy if you wanted to.
Well,
right?
there you are.
Kind of like an autopsy in a way, right?
Bring in the coroner, or the county coroner to take a look at why the ministry failed.
And right now we'll be the coroners. Okay, anyways, the first time I heard of this post-mortem was watching a church plant fail and having to, put it to rest. And in doing that, there was just a lot of sadness, a lot of guilt, a lot of feelings that went with that. And a friend of mine said, talk to them about doing a post-mortem. And so we met with them, and we did that, and it was great for grieving. It was great for letting go. Now, as we're talking about ministry failures, we're not talking about church planting, but we're also not talking about something that went on with a staff member who ran away with the organist. That's not the kind of ministry failure we're talking about. We're talking about an event that just crashed and burned. You expected better results that didn't happen. You expected this, you expected that, or something along those lines. We're not talking about the real. They may need postmortems too, but we're talking about the stuff that you and I need to do on a regular basis when something doesn't go right in church. And it's so important to be able to do this, because if you don't look at what didn't go right, then how will you know to correct it into the future, right? Okay, so we don't, as always, have a lot of time here, but you do have a workbook.
We have a workbook you can download in the description. You can grab a hold of that, and it has all of this and a lot more that we're going to talk about. We're going to kind of hit the high points. We will talk about essentially all the questions we're going to answer. You're going to answer in a postmortem, but just give you the high points so that you can, do a postmortem. So take notes just so you're familiar, but then grab the workbook, because it's really helpful tool.
Will it be helpful to have the workbook and watch this episode?
Not necessarily, but whatever.
Never mind. Okay.
You can always pause it and get it. It's so whatever.
Right. So we're going to start by talking about the initial failure assessment. Do you want to get started?
There's three parts. Okay.
Why don't we tell them the 3 parts?
Okay.
Go
ahead.
The initial failure assessment, the deep dive into causes of failure, and then completing the post-mortem.
I guess that's sewing up the body? Oh, maybe not.
Oh, my gosh. Well, you know what?
Is this a Halloween episode?
Wait, you know what? I can go with you there, because sewing up the body, a lot of churches do get torn apart when something isn't working just right. There's a lot of emotion that goes in, and often because a lot of resources are expended. Yeah. So in this case, we're going to just kind of sew it all together for the body.
There we are. All right.
Okay, go.
All right. So there's 2 primary parts of the initial failure assessment. So first thing is, was the event or the ministry, was it clearly defined? Now, sometimes we're going to have a fall festival. What does it mean, a fall festival? Does that mean trunk or treat? Does that mean cakewalks? Does it mean we're going to rake leaves? Are there specific goals that you were trying to get? Do we even know what we're doing? And truth is that sometimes we don't really nail that down. Okay, we give it a title, but we don't define our expectations. And this is point number 2. Is that, we don't do that. And then this is where we really miss is we don't have clearly defined outcomes. All right, we're going to have a fall festival. What are the outcomes we want out of that? Well, we want a lot of kids coming.
That's what you're going to do.
Okay, so
what's a lot?
What's a lot? And is that really the outcome? You want a bunch of kids walking across your parking lot? that's really what you want out of that? Or is it you're trying to make connections with the families? Or so what's the outcome you really want? And churches, by and large, really blow this because they really don't think through. Well, we're going to do a Bible study. What's the outcome? We're doing a Bible study.
Learning about the Bible. What does that
is
mean?
that really what you want? And honestly, that's what happened with our Sunday school program over a century or more, is that we said we're doing Sunday school. We're going to teach our kids or our adults, and we teach, but what was the outcome we wanted? Did we want well-educated kids, or did we want disciples of Jesus? And the reality is, since we didn't define it, we end up with well-educated people. We got lots of church members who aren't disciples of Jesus. They didn't move it from head to heart to hands. And that's, so again, what actual outcome are you looking for on this event?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on Sunday school there and what you're saying. I mean, Sunday school was started way back in the late 1800s because kids were working in the factories, and when they were off on Sundays, they were wreaking havoc and really being disruptive. And so
they weren't getting any education.
That's right, they weren't. And so it was a minister whose name I can't pull out of my head at the moment. I'd have to go back and look it up. Anyways,
someone can put it in the comment below. We appreciate that.
Sure. So this minister, he started a Sunday school, a school on Sunday, and as was the case for many people, then the Bible was kind of the primer that they were using
to teach how to read.
Right. So that outcome, that original outcome was to educate children so that they might have some opportunities and stop running around causing chaos on the street.
But they had a defined outcome that they were looking for.
Right. So, but now what's happened is we've gotten away from that.
Right.
And is that really the outcome? Like you say, is that really the outcome that we want? And when you start to talk about, well, we want disciples, followers of Jesus, deep heart, spirit-based followers of Jesus, we have to ask, is Sunday school really the venue for that?
Right. And it can be. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
But you have to, for everything you're doing in your church, you ought to know what your specific outcomes are.
Right.
And then, and this goes along with it, is that once those outcomes are determined, have you communicated them with the team? Does everyone who's working in this ministry on this event, do they understand what the goal is? Or is it we're doing the same thing we've always done?
Right.
So there's your initial failure assessment. Did we define the event really well? Did we know what we're doing? What were the goals? What does success look like? And what are the outcomes? What are we trying to get? So that's the initial failure assessment. In the workbook is part 1. And that you have to start somewhere. That's where you start.
Right. Okay.
Then we got to go deep dive.
Now we go deep dive, part 2. So there are 3 parts of part 2. The one is, and we'll start with leadership, selection, and empowerment. We have to ask ourselves, was the leader that was chosen, or who a lot of times volunteered themselves, right? Were they the best person for that project? And were they appropriately selected? One of the statements I hate the most is, well, if nobody else will do it, I'll do it. Well, you know what? If nobody else will do it, well, if I have to, I'll do it. I don't want you. I mean, that's a bottom line. If the people aren't there, you just aren't. It's not your ministry.
To be fair.
Okay.
Though, is that when someone says, "Oh well, if no one else will do it, I'll do it." God bless them. They're willing.
Okay,
they're willing to step up.
You're
whatever.
Right.
But the reality is when someone's just willing to do it instead of passionate about doing it, you're going to get what you don't really necessarily want. You get the best they can do,
right?
Or the best that they're willing to do,
or the best that they have. I'm thinking of they're drained. That you get the dregs, right? Exactly what they have to offer,
right? And so you're not going to get the passion that you really need. So if an event that you're planning or ministry you're planning doesn't have someone who's passionate about it, really reconsider whether this is a ministry that your church is called to do, because it probably isn't.
Well, and remember, God always prepares the leaders and the people for the ministries that he wants, right? He needs. Right. And so if those people aren't there, if the pieces aren't there, you really have to ask yourself and ask God, quite honestly, is this really the ministry that we're supposed to have? And if so, we need you to show who that leader is, not just who that person is, but who that leader is. Well,
go ahead. Before you go into the next one,
go.
there's another piece that goes with this, and this when the leader is selected, did they have the responsibility to get this done?
Oh, thank you.
Or did they have the authority to make the decisions necessary? So often churches say, we want you to do this, but they don't give them the authority to do what needs to get done.
Right.
You know, they'll say, yes, you got to do this, but you got to go to if you want to make any changes in schedule, if you want to use XYZ building, you got to go through the board, you got to go through this, there are rubrics. If you give the person a position or they're in charge of a ministry, if you're going to use a room, you got to make sure you check with the office so that you don't double book. And here's a budget that you can spend, but you don't have as long as you stay with that budget, spend it as needed. Right. Instead of having to go to the board, or the committee, I need to spend 47 cents for a pencil. Can I do that? Do I have the authority to do that? They need to have responsibility and the authority to do what needs to happen.
Okay, so let me say that if you're asked to be a leader, then you need to ask them, what is the budget? How much money do I have? Do I spend my money first?
Especially if they don't offer that in advance.
But, right. Do I spend the money and give you receipts? What's my guarantee that's going to be paid? Up to how much in receipts? Or are you going to give me cash, right? Or give me cash. Or will I order through something like, I don't know, Oriental Trading or Amazon, and then I'll use the credit card, right? The church's credit card, right. Debit card, whatever. Right. Yeah, so that's huge. And remember, we're talking about selecting leaders, but leaders, we want to talk to you about being selected or when you step forward.
Right. Do you have passion for it, and have you been given authority? Honestly, I don't do things anymore that I don't have authority for.
Oh my!
If they give me responsibility and I don't have the authority, I just say no, thank you. If I can't make the decisions I need to get made, I'm not interested in doing the job. And to be fair, you're not really interested in me doing the job. You're interested in controlling the job.
Yeah.
You just do it yourself at that point.
Right.
All right. So that's number one: leadership selection and empowerment. Number two
is preparation and support. So was there adequate preparation, adequate time for the preparation?
There you are.
Adequate time.
We want you to start this in 3 days. Is that okay? It's a citywide project. You got 3 days to pull it off.
Advent started 2 weeks ago. Will you please get the Advent candles lit?
Exactly.
Like what? Okay, so you need adequate preparation time. That's a whole other conversation, isn't it? Okay, and then second.
But besides adequate preparation time, do you have the adequate preparation? Did they prepare the leader? Did they tell them what they needed to do and what the responsibilities were?
Clear expectations, right? That's the second piece there.
Okay, all right,
were there clear expectations and communication?
And were those clarified instructions, the clarity, was it communicated? Because we often have clear expectations and then don't bother to share them very well.
Well, yeah, okay, and go back and ask questions like, what are the outcomes? How do you envision this? Tell me partly what your vision is, and then have conversation. I mean, it really needs to be conversational. This is what I'm thinking. And then you could say, oh, yeah, wow, okay, what if we did something like that? And really, leaders need to be somewhat creative, need to have some vision there, and also need to be able to pull people together.
Right. Lead, as opposed to doing.
I do want to say, though, that there's everything to be said about co-leaders, but they need to like each other or potentially like each other and be able to work together. And in that case, you need a person who's visionary, can see, and is detail-oriented. And then we need the other person to be able to pull people together.
Okay.
Why are you saying that?
Because normally speaking, someone who is big visionary people, they don't do details.
Okay.
You have a visionary person and you have a detail person.
And I'll go there with you.
There's three pieces you say. Yeah. There's visionary piece. Can you cast that vision? Do you see it in your head?
Go ahead.
Can you do the details?
Yeah.
And then between you or one of the others got to be able to pull people in.
Well,
because without a team, you're going nowhere. So someone's got to have that piece too.
That's true. Right.
Right.
Yes, or you just need to be the people who can do that, right?
Right.
But
If you're in a small church, 2 people it may be enough to pull off something.
But that's not a
huge.
team, and you set it up. I know. I don't think of it as a team, and you set up the future people.
Where do you draw the line with a team?
TEAM.
Oh, okay, there you go. 4 people, because if it's not 4, it's not a team. I'm not sure I agree with that, but hey,
I'm
whatever.
not sure I made it up on the fly.
All right.
Okay, so what level of coaching and supervision has been provided, right? How were you like encouraged? Who was doing that for you? It may have been a pastor if you're in a larger congregation. It may be the person, it could be the director, the minister that's responsible for that program. If you're doing, we'll go back to Fall Festival. Is it an activities group ministry? Is it a youth ministry, family ministry, adult ministries? How can you bring all that together and do a shared vision? Or was it just out there willy-nilly?
So one of the things, as you say that in terms of the support and whatnot, is that when we did our raising up leaders and or leaders who came to us and said we want to do XYZ ministry.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we always said is you had to have, if you were starting a ministry, and it was within the vision, the mission, the values of the church, that if you were starting a ministry, you also had to have a staff liaison.
Right.
Someone on staff, or if in a very small church, it could be one of the committee leaders, or team leaders, board members, but someone who has the authority to say yes or no and to say, wait a minute, we're out of line here.
Right.
Someone who has that kind of authority to be able to be the liaison who they go to and say, hey, I need to do this. And it's like, whoa, hang on. We need to get, that's outside those rubrics, outside of those boundaries.
Right.
We need to go get permission, whatever.
Right.
So things don't run off the rails. So, there needs to be some level of supervision. And I really do love the idea. You need a coach, someone who's encouraging. Now, there's a difference between a coach and a supervisor and a micromanager.
Yeah.
I also don't work for micromanagers.
No, me either.
If you're a micromanager, I'm not working for you because
because
you might as well do it.
Right.
If you have that much investment, let you do it. So, the bottom line is that's again, it goes back to the responsibility and the authority. I'm giving you the responsibility. I'm giving you the authority to do what you need to do, and then I'll be the supervisor. Touch base with me every week or let me know or whatever. It goes to the delegation versus empowerment kind of thing.
Yeah, well, leader, though, I will say you need to be checking with them. You just don't leave, but
absolutely.
you mean to be more explicit. Come check with me. You need to be checking with them.
Especially if they're not checking in with you.
Right. And you need to know about that funding. When we talk about permission-giving church, is that within our mission, vision, and value, who's going to be on your team? That's the second part.
Right.
Who's going to be on your team? How are you going to fund it?
Right.
And then who is your staff liaison? So, and again, in a smaller church, that may be your pastor. In a larger church, it may be one of your specific associates or your ministry directors. But you have to have that, right? Okay. And it needs to be a staff person. Right.
Okay? So what we've done, we've got the overview, and now we've dug kind of deep where, especially in looking at leadership and the team dynamics, if you will. We're looking at where we are. The next piece is, of course, that resource allocation.
Resource allocation. Sorry, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I kind of blipped out there for a moment. So resource allocation. Were there sufficient resources provided? Did you have what you needed? Did you have the people that you needed? Did you have the finances that you needed? Did you have you have the space? Yeah, I was thinking the materials.
Yep.
Did you have the materials available to you? And how were these resources managed and provided?
Yep.
Or did you have to beg for them? Did you have to make a deal with them? Did you have to go get them? I just keep hearing this story about people going and buying materials, and then the treasurer won't pay them back. I mean, I know the church that's happening right now.
And I got reverse situation. I know of churches that when the team went out and bought stuff, and now it's filling up lockers all over the church because they bought stuff they didn't need. And so it runs both ways. Buy what you need, and hopefully, again, if you're doing a postmortem, something's failed. And if something has failed and we overbought and we expected 100 kids and we ended up with 3, then okay, we expect to have the extra, but then what are we going to do with that?
So we need to do that
so
post-mortem.
Right.
Well, okay, I know I'm kind of veering, but I have to say it's one of the most creative ways of dealing with all that extra stuff. It was actually a Winder First Christian Church in Winder, Georgia. And the minister wife, Janine Richardson, they had a small room and she had all this stuff. And so she and some of the teachers and parents there in the congregation, they took this room, they put shelves up in there, and then they had all these labels. So there was paper, there was tissue paper, there were milk jugs, there were magazines.
It was organized
chaos.
Chaos.
It wasn't chaos. It was so well organized. So, string and yarn. So anybody working with children, youth, whatever, if you needed resources, you could go in there and pull out what you needed. It was amazing. And it was, because it was all extra, you didn't have to worry, if you were taking too much or anything else.
Right.
It was very generous.
It didn't belong to this group or that group.
Nope.
Hey, you took my yarn. I was planning on using it.
Exactly.
You should take the yarn out of there then.
Right. And I think the door was unlocked, if I'm not mistaken, and so that it was always open. Okay.
So deep dive into failure. Leadership.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Leadership was a preparation support, and the resources, were they available? And that really starts getting at the heart of failure.
Okay, wait. I want to say one more word about leaders and choosing your leaders. And that is that when you're looking at leaders and whether or not, or the ministry was, I hate to say the leader was a failure, but we have to be so careful when we choose our leader.
Or it didn't work.
It didn't work. I think, right, yeah. So you have to look at three aspects when you're considering leaders. The first is, do they have the capability? Are they capable? Do they have the, je ne sais whatever. Do they have,
je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi. Do they know what they're doing? Do they have some experience in this? So do they have the capability? If they don't, and some training would help, or some coaching, someone coming along, next question is, do they have the capacity to learn? I mean, some of us just don't have that capacity. When it comes to geometry, because of my disability, I'm not able to do geometry. I don't have the capacity to do that.
My mom couldn't program a VCR if you gave her an instruction manual in first grade English.
Okay,
Just
so
wasn't possible.
that capacity isn't there.
Right.
Do they have the capability? And if they don't, if you get them the resources, the training, the whatever they need, do they have the capacity to learn that? The other one is ability. And people tend to, not we anymore, people tend to, him maybe, to see capability and ability as synonymous.
Right.
They are not. Capability is, are you capable of doing it?
The capacity to be able to learn.
Well,
No,
okay. Could you, if you had the capacity, right? But ability is, are you able to do that right now? Is everything where you could, or do you have family problems that are happening, or family issues, or obligations? Somebody's getting married. You're not feeling well. Work is really taking off. That
you need to say no because you're just out of time.
Right, out of time, out of energy, out of oomph, everything. And so then you need to say no if you're being asked into a leadership position. But it's also although I have to say that I tend to say to people, don't make excuses for that person. Like they'll say, oh, she just comes home so tired. Well, maybe when you talk to him, you give him permission to say no. That's how I do. I always ask somebody and I give them permission to say no. I always tell them to go pray about it. That's one of those time issues. But if you really know that they're not able to, don't add one more thing to their plate. Don't even ask.
Right, exactly. All right.
Okay, go.
So now let's talk about winding this up. How do you complete the postmortem? Okay, you look at the beginning, your beginning assessment. Do we have outcomes? Do we know what we're doing? Did we get good leadership? Did we prepare well? Did we support them in that? And did they have what they needed to do? And of course, anything along those lines could be the root cause for that failure. And that's why we start there, is because often we point and we look at the leader, and it may not have been their issue.
No.
It may, or it may have been something else. But now we have enough information to really start asking some really good questions when you kind of wind this up. Number one, is taking an assessment of what went right and what went wrong. And you had a good point. You said what went wrong first.
Yes.
And what went right. And,
right.
And a great idea, Kris was saying earlier before we went on air. Okay, go ahead.
I could say it. So, but it came from when we did our church plan. And on worship, at first we met after worship that day, and we just, kind of tore it apart. So everything we felt good about, then we went to everything that was wrong. And so then we decided, okay, let's stay in the worshipful mood or the worship space on after church on Sunday, and we'll follow up on Monday or Tuesday, depending on people's schedules, how that allowed. But you could still look at what was wrong, and you'd get so tied up with that. And I remember serving a church, and there were people who were really upset with me. And so I met with the Pastoral Relations Committee, and they went on and on and on for 45 minutes. I listened to this, and finally I said, did no one have anything nice to say about me? And they said, oh my gosh. And they went on and on and on. So set a timer for 10 minutes.
Set a time limit, right?
A time, yeah. Well, and I'd say a timer. Yeah,
right,
set a time limit, about 10 minutes, and say, what didn't go so well, right? What went wrong, or what didn't go so well? Click that timer goes off, now switch over. What did go well? What did go well?
And when you do ask the question, what didn't go well, look at the question, where did the project fail to meet expectations? Now, here's the key.
There you go.
So often, we had no expectations.
Right. It takes us back to the first part, right?
Exactly.
What was your goal? Right? What were your expectations? Right? What was it supposed to be? So, you just go back.
It's really, really hard to look at success if you had not defined what success is.
Right.
So right off the bat, so what went right, what went wrong, what went wrong, what went right. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
And then what was successful, and where did the project fail to meet our expectations? Okay, so that's number one. Number two is identifying the sources of the failure. This is the blame game. This is where we have to, and the reality is you have to assign blame. Now, it's not like it's your fault.
Well, it's not necessarily a person.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But where was the failure at? Was the failure due to poor leadership on the leader's side? Was it poor supervision or poor leadership selection on the upper level leadership side, whoever did the recruiting and whatever? Or were there external factors? Was there something that went on that, hey, we expected this to work, but the Ferris wheel fell over, because it got windy. What did it rain on our outdoor parade? So what were there external factors? And then again, how did each one contribute to the success or the failure? And was there anything we could have done about it?
Yeah, done differently.
Right, done differently. Yeah, right, exactly.
Is there anything we could have done differently? And the reality is, sometimes I think we're going to say about this more in a moment, but sometimes it's just I know, but it's the wrong place, the wrong time, or whatever. And so you might ask, given different variables, or given different situations, circumstances, could it have been possible? So we really do have to look at that. What were those externals, and all things different, then could it be possible? Right.
And then there's the last one, and this is the biggie. Okay, it's not as big as clear expectations and outcomes, but it's close. Did we engage the community, or whatever community we're trying to reach? And was this event relevant to that community, to the people we were trying to do this event for, this ministry for? Was it relevant? And if it was an event that we were attracting those from outside the church, was there any effort to understand them, or did we just project? Oh, well, everyone will love a movie night. Really? Maybe not. Did we talk to them? Did we learn from them what they're? Let me go on. Did they learn from them what they wanted, what they need, what their aspirations, whatever it is that we were trying to create? Did we build a bridge over there and hear what they needed or what their interests were? If did we try to understand? Because so often We don't. We just project on the community.
And did we invite them?
Right.
I mean, that's a huge piece, right? You said something earlier about having 3 kids show up, right? And the question is, did you invite beyond that?
Right.
And how did you invite? What was that about as well?
Right.
Okay, now I'm done.
And finally, what was the impact of the project success or failure? Did you hurt your reputation? Or was this just something that was like, okay, we'll do better next time? But when you have all this information, then you can compile it and say, now, what will we do different next time? Or is this something we will not do
right.
next
Will there
time?
be a next time?
Will there be a next time?
Exactly.
And with all that said, hey, we are out of time.
So we have to say goodbye. Have a great week.
Don't forget to download the resources right there. And now have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.